All right, you went through the 3 days and 3 nights a couple weeks ago. This is kind of a follow up to that. I sent Pastor Steve this whole thing. I'm just going to condense it. And it's from Patty, and she says, where should I start here? Getting the 3 days and 3 nights, Jesus died on Thursday, Nisan 14, before sundown, and was put into the tomb just after sundown, and Nisan 15. Thursday evening, by our reckoning, the count was Thursday night, Friday day, Friday night, Saturday day, Saturday night, Sunday day. So there you have it, 3 days and 3 nights. This is how I've reconciled my confusion over that account. Jesus said 3 days and 3 nights, and it was so. You talked about this before. What is your thoughts on this timeline that Patty has?
Well, Patty, number one, Jesus didn't die on the 14th of Nisan. 14th of Nisan was when the Passover lambs were offered as a sacrifice, and the Gospels are clear that Jesus kept the Passover. Eating the Passover took place on the 15th of Nisan. And so they would offer the lambs as a sacrifice on the 14th, and then on the 15th, which is at sundown, as soon as the sun goes down, you're on the 15th of Nisan. That's when they would eat the Passover sacrifice. You have this whole thing where you pick up commentaries, and commentators will say that Jesus was not eating the Passover, or that he was eating a Passover that was different than the Passover in Jerusalem. And so they try to make a Passover that was a Galilean Passover, which would be the night before the Jerusalem Passover, and try to make two of them. And that is it's not historical, and it's not biblical. I've never been able to find that. That is just a construct to try to take care of some things. One of the things that they're trying to take care of, and I'm getting in the weeds here, and so I'm sorry if you don't know what I'm talking about, but in John chapter 18, there's a passage where it says that the priests don't want to go into the praetorium where Pilate was because they wanted to eat the Passover. And so being a bunch of Gentiles, we generally think, okay, well, that's talking about the Jewish Passover, and so that means that night was the Passover, and so Jesus would have been sacrificed at the same time that the Passover lambs are sacrificed. The whole structure there, the fact that they're afraid that if they go into his house, they're going to be unclean and can't eat the Passover. You stop being unclean at nightfall. And so if the lambs are being sacrificed if that's the 14th, and the lambs are being sacrificed on the 14th, when the sun goes down, it doesn't matter if you went into a Gentile's house on that day. As soon as sundown happens, you're no longer unclean. There is another sacrifice. They're called Hagigahs. They're festival sacrifices. And so the first one is called a Korban Hagigah, and that is the Passover itself. That's the Passover sacrifice. There was another one the next day that was a voluntary offering. And the Passover sacrifice, you didn't have to be the one to offer that sacrifice. You could have a family member go and do that for you, and even if you were unclean, you could come back and you could eat the Passover that night. But when you're talking about the Hagigah, the head of the household is the one who had to go and offer that sacrifice specifically for their families. And so each one of these guys, if they were going to eat that second Passover meal, it's another festival meal for the Day of Unleavened Bread, they would have to not only be clean by sundown, they had to be clean before they offered the sacrifice. And if they walked into a Gentile's house, that would make them unclean. That's what that one is talking about. It's not talking about what we would normally call a Passover. And so I understand the symbology, and people love to say that Jesus died at the very same time that the Passover offerings were being offered. But the Synoptic Gospels are clear on the fact that Jesus kept the Passover. And so that's the sacrifice for the Passover was made on the 14th. Jesus would have been eating the Passover on the 15th that night. And so that's my first problem with that chronology. My next problem is that you still have more than 3 days and 3 nights, even with that. And so the favorite chronologies are Jesus died on a Wednesday, or Jesus died on a Thursday, or Jesus died on a Friday. Those are the only options. If Jesus came in to the city of Jerusalem on Sunday, on Palm Sunday, that's the 10th of Nisan. So Sunday, the 10th, Monday, 11, 12, Tuesday's the 12th, Wednesday's the 13th, Thursday is the 14th of Nisan. And so that is when the Passover lambs would be sacrificed, and then Jesus would have been eating on the 15th of Nisan. The only other option there, you can't have Jesus coming into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And so now you don't have him coming in on the 10th of Nisan, you would have him coming in on the 8th of Nisan. And so you're still getting, and it depends on the year and that kind of stuff. You could call Friday that year the 10th of Nisan, but then you would have Jesus, if he came in on the 10th of Nisan, you're going to have Jesus. The 11th would be a Saturday, the 12th would be a Sunday, the 13th would be a Monday, and the 14th would be a Tuesday. And so then you get to Wednesday, and you can start doing some things with that. But those are the options for Jesus coming in. And if Jesus came in on the 10th of Nisan, and he doesn't have to, because the Bible doesn't flatly say that, but most likely he did. If he comes in on the 10th of Nisan, and that's on a Sunday, you are forced to the end of the week at that point. Again, because Jesus actually ate the Passover. So that would be on the 15th of Nisan. So you get that?
Yep.
So the Jewish day starts at sundown. It doesn't start at midnight, and it doesn't start at sunup. Jewish day starts at sundown. And so if Jesus dies on a Wednesday night, or on a Wednesday, so Jesus died about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere around there, and he's in the grave before sundown, which would be about 6 o'clock. And so he's in the grave for part of Wednesday, for example. And then you have Thursday starts at sundown. So Thursday night, and then Thursday day, that's one whole day. Friday night and Friday day, that's another whole day. Saturday night and Saturday day, that's another whole day. So this is for a Wednesday crucifixion. So you have Jesus in the grave before sundown on Wednesday. So he's in there part of the day on Wednesday, all of Thursday, all of Friday, all of Saturday, but then he's still in the grave on Sunday night, or on Saturday night, which we would call, that starts Sunday. So he's still in the grave on Sunday. The stone is rolled away just previous to the women coming and coming to the tomb. And the Bible is clear on the fact that they came at sunup. And so they left while it was still dark. They left their homes while they were, or the places where they were staying, while it was still dark. It was sunup at the time that they came to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away. And in Matthew's gospel, it lets you know that the events, as far as the rolling away of the stone, happened early that morning. And this is the way that you get this. In Matthew chapter 28, it says, "There was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door." Previous to that, it says, after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. It doesn't tell you specifically when the stone was rolled away. We just know that the stone was rolled away before they got there. But when you get down further in the passage, it says, now, verse 11, "While they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. And when they had assembled the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers and told them to say the disciples came and stole the body away while we slept." That lets you know that it was early that morning when these guys left the area of the tomb. If it was on the previous night, they would have just gone to the priest that night. But obviously, it's early in the morning, and so while the women are coming to the tomb, the soldiers are passing them. Basically, they're on the way to the priest's house, and the reason that that's happening is because they've woken up from going unconscious when the stone was rolled away by the angel. It says that they fell over for fright. And unless you want to make them be unconscious for all night long or something along those lines, it starts getting pretty goofy. Okay, and so again with that, you have more than 3.5 days when you're doing a Wednesday. When you do a Thursday, you got some of the same issues. So he goes into the grave before Thursday is over. So he's in the grave part of Thursday, even if it's an hour. He's in the grave part of Thursday. Then he's there for Friday, night and day. Then he's there for Saturday, night and day. And then he's there for Sunday, night. Okay? And so you've got Thursday part of the day, 1 whole day, 2 whole days, and half a day. And so again, you still don't have 3.5 days. And one of the things that's clear in the passage in Matthew is that when the priests are talking to Pilate about the fact that Jesus said that he was going to rise from the dead, what they say to him is in verse 62, on the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, "Sir, we remember while he was still alive, how that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day, lest the disciples come by night and steal him away and say to the people, 'He has risen from the dead.'" And so they don't say till the 4th day. They say till the 3rd day. And so that lets you know that what we're talking about is a Jewish idiom here. Because if it was 3 full days and 3 full nights, in that sense, and it can mean that, obviously, but if these guys were taking it as 3 full days and 3 full nights, I would have the guard there until the 4th day, because it's after the last day that it's after the 3rd day that Jesus would rise, is what he was saying. And so this is something that you see throughout Scripture. That whole idea of 3 days and 3 nights is not necessarily 3 days and 3 nights. And so when I look at this whole issue, I've seen every permutation of chronology that you can come up with, and just as I did with yours is overlapping, or it doesn't have enough time, because again, if he dies Thursday, you got a part of Thursday. We can leave that out if you want to. But you got Friday, night and day, Saturday, night and day, and Sunday night. You don't have Sunday day, because by the time that the sun comes up, Jesus has already risen, and he's not in the tomb anymore, and the ladies are seeing angels, and Mary is seeing Jesus specifically at that point. And so that's my problem with the whole thing, where somebody tries to get hard and fast on 3 days and 3 nights. There is another permutation of this that usually comes up with Jewish roots movement, and they try to have Jesus raised at the end of the Sabbath on Saturday. So they have Jesus dying on a Wednesday, and before the sun goes down on Saturday, they have Jesus rise from the dead at that point. But then the problem is, why did we do all this stuff for Sunday? Why is the angel showing up early Sunday morning? Why are the women? Why is the whole thing with the tomb being empty and all the apostles coming in, not done on a Saturday night, for example, but done on a Sunday morning? Why is that whole thing happening? Why is Jesus appearing to them on the first day of the week instead of appearing to during the day? Why is he appearing to them on the day of the first day of the week instead of appearing to them right after sundown? And so
why is the church meeting on the first day of the week for 2,000 years?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the Jewish roots movement tries to do is say that the church just decided that and moved things. No, that's what the text is talking about. It was Sunday morning that all these events took place. And so again, not to just pick your whole chronology apart, but this is what I've done with every single one of these chronologies. And there is no way to get literally 3 days and 3 nights and still have the whole thing where Jesus is where the stones rolled away on Sunday night Jewish speak, on the evening of Saturday night for us.
Right.
And so you just can't get that number with the death of Jesus on one day and going into the next day. And so I'm not hard and fast on a Friday death of Jesus. I do know that he died after the Passover. He died on the same day that they ate the Passover meal. So they ate the Passover meal on the night after the Passover was sacrificed, which was the day that Jesus died on the cross. He would have died also at the time of the free will offering of the Haggadah that the high priests were so worried about eating. And again, that was a voluntary offering for the feast day. Another issue that comes up is the Sabbaths. And so the day after the offering up of the Passover, the first day of unleavened bread is a Sabbath, and you're not supposed to be doing any customary work on that day. But they were allowed to do preparations. If it fell on a Friday, for example, they were allowed to do preparations for the Sabbath, but they just had to do this little ceremony on the day before the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so what they did was, I believe it was some portion of a meal that they had to boil, and that count. This is getting into the weeds again. So when you're Jewish and you're going to keep the Sabbath day, you're not allowed to light a fire on the Sabbath day. And so you would do all your cooking on the Friday night or the Friday afternoon before sundown on Friday, so that you would have your meals prepared for Saturday, right? And so with a Passover that starts out on a Thursday, for example, so Thursday during the day is when they would offer the Passover up, and then that night begins the first day of unleavened bread, and that's when they ate the Passover, and that was a Sabbath day. But they were allowed. It wasn't like a strict Sabbath like the seventh day Sabbath is. They were allowed. They weren't to do any customary or any hard labor on that day. But you could do labor that promoted the feast days. And so what they would do is they would take and start a meal, just a part of a meal, on the before sundown when they were going to eat the Sabbath, and that in their mind carried through to the next day, so that they could go out shopping, they could do whatever they needed to do to fix that next meal and to prepare for the Sabbath day after. And so it wasn't the kind of a Sabbath day where they couldn't do anything. And that's again, that's in the weeds, and that's a bunch of Jewish traditions and that kind of stuff. But that's the case with that. So pretty much all those things get answered when you go through and you look at some of the historical works. One of the best books I've ever used on this stuff or read on this stuff is by Alfred Edersheim, and it's Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah. And that's where I first read about the Haggadah. There's a Korban Haggadah, like I said, and that's the Passover sacrifice. But then there is also another Haggadah, which means festival offering, and that is the next day. That's the one that the Pharisees were worried about, and it was something that was spoken about in the law. So anyway.
All right, Patty. Hopefully that takes care of your question. Thanks for watching the show and writing into us. Really appreciate it.